Dillon Brooks, and it just kind of all moved to a point where they ended up getting Kelly Oubre, right? Some people might be still mad at him for giving up T.J. Warren and not getting anything back for a guy who absolutely lit it up in an Indiana Pacers uniform, both in the season and in the bubble. But if you look back at kind of the chain of events, you don't get to where we are now if you didn't do a lot of those things before, meaning he couldn't have brought in Ricky Rubio without selling T.J. Warren in a way, is what he had to do to get the money to pay for a point guard. And, you know, we just got done talking about what Ricky's contributions were. I don't need to go through that again. So that led to Chris Paul. And so I think James Jones, in a way, has maybe even skipped a step or two. And I feel like he should get a lot of love for the creation of this roster, but I also feel like there should be an assist to a guy like Jeff Bauer, who's a longtime pro in the NBA front office, who's helping James with these relationships with some of the older GMs around the league, guys that have known Jeff a lot longer than they maybe knew James, and they trust Jeff from a front office standpoint, whereas they maybe knew James as a player more than a general manager or a front office guy. So that takes time for him to kind of establish himself in this role, and having a guy like Jeff, I think, maybe has helped him. That's just me hypothesizing. I haven't heard that straight from James, but I'm just guessing, because a lot of people who were skeptical about what James Jones was going to be able to accomplish as a young general manager in this league had that skepticism because they felt like he didn't have the Rolodex. He had the Rolodex of the players. He had all the players on speed dial, but he didn't have the Rolodex of the guys who really could flip the switch and sign off on the deals and the trades. And those are the general managers, president of basketball operations around the league. Now I feel like he's built that, and he's built the trust with some of them too. And that's huge moving forward because, he's going to continue to try to tweak this roster and build it to win a championship. That's his singular focus, and I love it.
I'm so excited for the Suns and what's ahead. And I want to go ahead and ask you, being with what we saw in the changes, and these are previous Suns players, coaches, and then I just have to ask you about the Brooklyn Nets with Steve Nash, Mike D'Antoni, Amari Stoudemire coming together, and with them having on the team and working with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, just to name a couple, seeing that come together. All of us here, have you seen what these three, Steve Nash, D'Antoni, and Stoudemire, have done, and when they were with the Suns, and now just seeing that kind of just move over to the Brooklyn Nets and what they can create. Tell me a little bit about that, John.
But I know, Joe, you're not the only one wondering what they're cooking in Brooklyn, because it's going to be one that I think most of us on Planet Orange are going to keep kind of the side eye on, see what's happening over there. And the nice thing about it is you're going to only play them twice, and they're in the Eastern Conference. You're not fighting them for a playoff spot, so you can actually, as a Suns fan, still hope good things for guys like Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Mike D'Antoni, and on and on. Maybe not so much Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. That's where it's tricky for me, Joe, because you got the threesome that we just discussed that I love, right? All three of those dudes, awesome guys. And boy, I mean, if you're a Suns fan, you have to love all three of those guys with what they did here in the Valley. But then you got these other two polarizing characters in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And I don't have a whole lot of love for either one of those guys. So it's a little tricky situation from my standpoint. It's like I want the coaches to do great, but I don't know about the players. It's going to be fascinating because we haven't seen Kevin Durant play for so long. And so that's where it starts for me. If they're going to really be a threat in the East, he's got to be the Durantula. He's got to be that dude that we got used to seeing being one of the best players on the planet. And I think he might be. And then you got Kyrie Irving, who, while he might be a guy that I don't love his mindset, he's got the best handle in the league, and he's still Uncle Drew. I mean, he still is that guy when he plays basketball. And so they could be very, very dangerous. And in the Eastern Conference, I feel like there's some teams that are following that trend, that are up and coming. It's going to be interesting to see how Miami follows the act they had down in the bubble. They were very impressive. But then you still wonder, what's going to happen to the Tampa Bay Raptors? We the South now instead of we the North. I mean, that's another fascinating story in the East. And I think Boston is going to be good. So, not to mention Philadelphia. I think Brooklyn will be in the mix because they have two superstars, and yet it's going to be a trial and error for their head coach, Steve Nash, to rein them all in, to figure out how that whole thing's going to work. It's great that he has Steve on the bench, though. I mean, to have Steve D'Antoni with Amari, I mean, it's just, I can't imagine what their meetings are. I can't imagine, actually, what their meetings are going to be like. They're going to be very entertaining.
Absolutely.
I tell you what, so are you going to burn sage before games like Kyrie?
I don't do a lot of things like Kyrie, PLR. That might surprise you. We don't see the world the same way, if you will.
Oh, gosh. Bloomer, bringing it back to the Western Conference, we saw the Los Angeles Lakers twice. We saw AD go off the other night on Friday night for 35. Kyle Kuzma's got his money. He's got his $40 million. AD got his money. LeBron got his money. The Cyclone, Taylor Horton Tucker looks like he's going to be the real deal. What do you think? What do you see in this Los Angeles Lakers team? Are they a team that can repeat as world champions?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, oh, it's nauseating. Yeah, I think they're going to be really, really good again. And even if they want to take time for rest, they're going to be able to. I think they'll have that opportunity to let LeBron take some time off before the playoffs, and maybe even the unibrow too, and let Taylor Horton Tucker go do his thing for a few games to get everybody excited again. I mean, he's an impressive specimen. I know it was a preseason, but a lot of people are on that hype train with THT. I just don't know how much time he's going to get when they don't sit their stars, because they're a very deep team right now. They got more deep than they were last year as champions. So it's going to be tough to beat them. But look, LeBron James, Father Time, he's got to win one off him at some point, doesn't he? I'm not trying to say let's get him hurt. Let's have him not play as good. Is that too much to ask? I mean, it's
impossible.
Ridiculous. Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. And even in the preseason, he shows up and he's still motivated, determined, and unstoppable.
My goodness. I'm scared to see that, as much as, they are a great team, the Lakers, but being a Suns fan, of course, I agree with you.
Well, and Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis deserves a lot of credit. I think some people will say, well, he just went to go play with LeBron so he could get his title. That title doesn't happen, doesn't even come close without Anthony Davis. And I think people understand, but just watching him again in person this week in the preseason games, he's different. So you've got two guys different than anyone who's come before him on the same team. One's in his prime, Anthony Davis, and the other one somehow still his prime. He shouldn't be anywhere near his prime at almost 36 years of age, but he still is. And then you added some really good veterans, including some hungry ones that want a ring. So it's a good recipe that Rob Pelinka's using over there, and Frank Vogel's kind of the beneficiary of it. I don't know how much coaching he's doing, but he's winning. And so as long as that's happening, he's not going anywhere either.
Hey, Anthony Davis is from Chicago. Just thought I'd point that out to those that
is he really?
Yeah, just
Fun
throwing
fact.
stuff.
Oh yeah, fun fact, Joe.
Just throwing stuff out there, just sharing, spitballing.
And I want to pose this next question to both you, John, and PLR, and then I have one before we wrap up. Another question after that, but I have to ask about James Harden. We've hearing what's going out there. He's not happy with Houston, looking to get traded. There's a lot of, how would you say, a lot of rockiness there, I guess. So do we see a trade happening? We're hearing Dallas may be a playmaker, if that may happen, maybe Harden going to Brooklyn and being an addition to, that force that has been created there. Miami Heat, a finals contender that, they were in the finals, lost against the Lakers, the 76ers, who are rebuilding and, coming together and possibility of having something great this coming season, or maybe even going to Portland. Those are just some of the talks that, have been rumored. So what do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts? And what is he going to get traded? Is it at all even a possibility?
I'm going to let the man go first.
Oh, well, I was going to let you go first. I think, oh man, this is a tough one because unlike Chris Paul, look, they have similar contracts, believe it or not, in the 40 million range for Harden the next 2 years, right? More than that. You found it far-fetched for that contract to be moved with Chris Paul. It got moved. I don't think the contract is what's keeping James Harden from being moved. I think James Harden and his approach right now is potentially what's keeping him from being moved. I think he could have potentially made this happen had he approached it differently, but it's also on the Rockets. So where we give Chris Paul credit for making the move to Phoenix happen, you also have to give Sam Presti credit for facilitating, enabling it to happen, right? The Rockets need to be in a position to help their star if he really wants to go somewhere else, and I don't know if they are. And their star has to be in a position to go to a place where he can also help the team he's leaving get better in doing so, because that's the trade they're going to want to make, is a trade that gets them something. It's not going to be equal value, because we know there just isn't a lot of equal value when you talk about the beard. I mean, this dude is another one of those originals. He's another one of those unique, different kind of guys. But I think the thing with James Harden and PLR, you tell me what you think on this one. I think that if you're going to get James Harden, you don't want to change James to fit your team. You want to get James Harden and let James Harden be James Harden, because I don't feel like you're going to get the most out of him if you try to put him into a box and mold him into your system. What do you think about that, PL?
I think it has to be a little bit 50-50 with that, because I think other teams are saying, we don't want to change James, but we see what James does in the playoffs doesn't work for the long run. So I heard that he's going to end up inevitably in Philadelphia. The problem is, I'm also hearing Houston is having reservations about taking Ben Simmons, because you're getting a guy that can't shoot to play alongside a guy that can't shoot. So you're going from a team full of shooters to a team with, in essence, no shooters. James has to be receptive too. He's going to have to show it. And I watched one of the games in the preseason, and he actually was moving a little bit without the ball, which is something he never did before. He would just stand. And I think he's trying to show that he has the ability to do other things, because when he was in OKC, he moved without the ball and he did other things. So I think there has to be a willing to give on both sides. Like you said, James has to understand, even if he stays in Houston, it's not going to be the James Harden 19 dribbles and a pull-up. That's just not going to be the way Silas is going to play. So I think Houston and James has to come to this realization. The girl doesn't want you anymore, and you don't want her anymore. So you need to let her go, and she needs to just go. And so you guys need to come up with the way you're going to split the house, split the dog, split the money, and just make it happen. And I think that's where Houston is. Both sides are kind of dug in, and neither side wants to show that they're willing to give a little to get a little. Houston's not going to win a title built the way they are. They're just not. So if they're going to go full rebuild, they got to move James. James has to realize when he gets moved, he can't do 19 dribbles in a cloud of dust. It's just not going to happen. So they both have to realize they've got to give a little to get what they really want.
One last question before both of you have to jump off in. We saw how short of a season it was, but also how short of a break the players also had, the teams had. My question here is, how would this affect the short turnaround, affect the players, affect the teams? Is it going to be a benefit, or is it going to be more of a damaging effect, if at all? As you know, we have the season, starting here. The countdown, is just a few hours away. They are going to have a shorter season. The season will end in March. But is this a plus? Like, let's say, for instance, for the Lakers, or is it going to hurt them versus a team that, had a little bit of a longer break and getting out of the bubble and not making the finals or not making the playoffs? Just putting it all into consideration, how is this going to impact them?
It's a good question. I think that the teams that have been off since last March are at a disadvantage, clearly. and that's because they just haven't been playing team basketball. I think the teams that are at an advantage are the ones that have the majority of their group back. It's easy to say because you could say that pretty much about every season, but I just think it's because everything was ramped up faster and shortened, as you